Hello everybody and welcome to this lesson from Miss Duckworth's classroom. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on how to respond to the extract question, and today we're going to be looking at how to write up your response, and this is on the play Death and the King's Horseman. So what did we do in part 1? We looked at the question, we looked at how to interpret, deconstruct the question, think about what those keywords mean. We also looked at how to understand the extract significance, how to analyse in time conditions, how to use the knowledge that you already have in terms of interpreting the extract, analysing the extract, looking at the deeper meanings and the big ideas. We annotated for a range of techniques, we brainstormed a variety of different ideas and came up with a 3-point plan. So this is what we ended up with at the end of lesson 1. So this was the extract that we used. If you haven't looked at lesson 1 yet, please do so, just so you can see the way in which I approach the question, the way in which I use the extract to build up my plan. So as you can see, all of the quotations that have numbers, these are our final choices, and this was our plan over here. So you can see which quotations go with each different point on my plan. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this with you, but just wanted to show you, and you can just pause the video just to have a quick look. This is my suggested essay structure. If you can, do start with a very, very brief overview, which I will show you on the next slide. You've got 3 points, so think of your main body as having 3 main ideas. It's very difficult to say how many paragraphs. Pupils always want to know how many paragraphs should I include in my essay. It's not really as easy as giving you a formula in terms of if you do 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs. Really, you want 3 points. It may be that some of those points are a little bit more developed and they go over into 1-2 paragraphs. So as long as you think of your essay in terms of introduction, main body, 3 different ideas in your main body, conclusion if you have time. And in terms of the different points of your sections, think about using some of these different guiding questions to help you with the structure. So if you do want to have a look at that in a little bit more detail, then do pause the video now, but I will go through an example with you. So this is the introduction. So just to remind us, this was the question: explore the ways in which Soyinka makes this such a powerful and revealing moment in the play. Down the side here, I've just got just a few examples of academic language to help you with your introduction. You've got your adverbs, you've got your verbs. Using a combination of these really can help you with the sophistication of your expression, really helps you to develop your ideas as well. So this is my introduction. It's not massively long. Obviously, you don't want to spend too long on your introduction. You want to show that you've engaged with the extract. You want to give an overview of what you're going to talk about, and then just really think about Soyinka's intention and what he's doing here. So you can see that I've broken my introduction into 3 different parts. So it starts off with why this extract is significant or key or important. Regardless of what the question is, do just think about, what makes this such a standout extract? Why is it important? What is happening here? What's revealed to me here? What am I supposed to understand here? How are characters, relationship, action, setting presented to me? And then in the middle here, we've got the overview of the ideas that are going to be covered. You will recognise these from my plan if you were with me in lesson 1. But everything that I've highlighted, that will just feed nicely into my plan. So obviously I had my plan first. That helped me to write on my introduction. And then at the end, I've just got 1 sentence just summing up what Soyinka is doing in this extract. Okay, so what's he doing here in this extract? So the examiner clearly knows I've got a very good understanding, not only of the play itself and what's happening, but also in terms of the playwright's intention and playwright's purpose. So let's have a look. In this extract, Soyinka powerfully engages the audience by revealing the cultural divide between Lunde and Jain, which further exemplifies the division between English and Yoruba culture. So you'll notice that I have already used keywords from the question, and you'll notice when I go through my essay with you that I've got synonyms for those as well. I don't just keep reusing the same ones over and over. This division can clearly be seen in the way that both characters view death, and it is in this way that Soyinka reveals the significance of ritual sacrifice in Yoruba culture. Furthermore, Soyinka's skillful characterization of Olunde as someone who is able to bridge the gap between 2 cultures showcases him as someone who has an insight with regards to honour and death. All of those ideas are in my plan, and obviously the examiner will now see that in my essay. Through his interaction between the characters, through this interaction between the characters, Soyinka is able to reinforce the idea that mutual understanding and sympathy is needed in order for different cultures to respect and learn from each other. And that really is the crux of the entire essay that I'm going to write. Obviously, I only know that because I spent time making notes, I spent time making a plan, and that's why it is really, really important that you do gather all of your ideas together before you start to write your essay. So just to remind you, this is the plan that I made in lesson 1. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just my write-up of point 1. Just for timing purposes, it's really difficult to include an entire essay just in one lesson. What I've tried to do is I've tried to make this point relatively detailed. I've tried to showcase all of the different skills that you're required to demonstrate yourselves, just so you've got a really good idea of what makes a successful and sophisticated response. So this is my response, obviously very, very colourful. If you want to spend some time looking at it yourself, then do just pause the video and you can slowly go back through it once I've explained it, and all of this will become a little bit clearer to you. So what I've done is I've just created a checklist that's based on the mark scheme. It's based on the assessment objectives and all the skills that you're required to demonstrate. And I just wanted you to see exactly where I'm kind of hitting that mark scheme, hitting those assessment objectives as we go through. As the extract begins, Soyinka powerfully presents the division between English and Yoruba culture. So note here that I've already got my relevant point, shows my understanding, and wherever you see the blues, you can see that this is me going back to that point. What you don't want to do is you don't want to start off with a really nice, clear point and then lose it as you start to write your essay, because then it all becomes a little bit disjointed, and then the examiner is struggling to understand the relevance of the rest of what you're saying. During their conversation, Jane and Olunde both repeat the word suicide. Now, do make sure that you introduce and embed your evidence. And by that, I mean, don't just throw a quotation and leave it hanging. The examiner doesn't really know who's talking to who, or what's happening. So notice that I'm introducing that. What's happening? What's the context of this quotation that I'm about to include? And I've also immediately gone for a technique. I'm talking about repetition. So I've noticed that the word is repeated. So if you see a technique, say it and then analyse it. However, the adjective that each one uses makes it clear that their respective views of suicide are steeped rather heavily in their own cultural views. So this is now, I'm interpreting meaning, but I'm also going back to the question, all about the different cultures within this extract. Jane refers to the ritual suicide, which is at the heart of Olunde's father's role. Notice how my evidence is nicely embedded here. The fact that this is posed as a question, so again I'm noticing a variety of different things to do with the language and the techniques. If you notice it, say it. This highlights her disbelief in such a thing and also clearly places her viewpoint as one that reflects the colonial viewpoint. So I've also got this reference to context. Again, you'll see I've just got 2 references to context. They do stand out. Don't include context unless it's relevant and it supports what you want to say. Interestingly, Olunde skillfully returns Jane's question with one of his own and asks, is that worse than mass suicide? Again, introduced and embedded. Olunde's use of mass instead of ritual juxtaposes the 2 cultures. I've got my technique here, I've gone back to the question, and now I'm about to interpret why I think they both use different words here, and reveals not only the division between them, but the similarities. It could be argued, so look at my tentative phrase here, really just helps here with your academic phrasing. Could be argued that Soyinka is suggesting that both cultures are more similar than they think, and uses Olunde as a mouthpiece for this. So I've got my writer intention here as well. Furthermore, and do just note how I am using connectives as well to build upon what I've already got, pushes my essay along. By referencing the mass suicide of the war, Olunde himself brings the 2 cultures, going back to my initial point up here, together and presents the argument that one suicide is much like the next. So I've got a really good understanding here of what's happening and what the meaning is. This thereby highlights the fact that it is only the colonial worldview, which is corrupted by a sense of superiority, that is able to look with disdain on one act within a different culture, yet revere the same act in their own. Really nice interpretation here of what all of that means. This idea of disdain is further exemplified through the use of personal pronouns. So think about how you're going to make nice transitions and linking phrases. So I've got the word disdain here in my previous sentence. That's an idea that I've noticed I can take further into my next point here. So do think about how you can link your different phrases, link the different sections here, and use words to make a really nice transition. So then I've gone back into my language analysis, use of personal pronouns to create a distance between the two cultures. So I've analysed what the personal pronouns do, and also this linking back to culture. Again, back to my point. So you can see there's nothing that I say here that isn't in support of this point up here that I've already indicated this is what I'm going to be talking about. So you've got to keep everything quite tight here. Through the use of you people, the audience is enlightened to Jane's ignorance as she reverts to a position of superiority. So again, I've gone back to this analysis, but also the effect on the audience. Again, key word here, so revealing, enlightened, very, very similar. So I'm also showing that everything that I'm saying is relevant to the question as well as to my own point. Jane exclaims, you talk, and follows this up with you people. So I've nicely embedded that there. I've just taken the bits that I need. Remember, short, sharp quotations. You don't need to have a really, really long quotation. Just think about the bits that you need and paraphrase the rest. This repetition of you pushes Olunde into the realm of outsider and creates a barrier between the two. So I've noticed again the technique of repetition, but I'm also now thinking about the effect of that word you, and I've really analysed what it does here. Jane's emotion is clearly revealed through the exclamation, and it could be argued that it's a shock at Olunde's intellectual ability. So my interpretation of why I think there is an exclamation mark there, again, just thinking about the techniques, the dramatic devices that I used. At his intellectual ability to draw similarities between both cultures, again, not forgetting to go back to my initial point. In order to reassert her position and to remind Olunde of his, Jane's striking use of you people reminds both Olunde and the audience that the underlying difference between them is ever present. So I've gone back to my question with use of the word striking, gone back to the point that I've already said that I'm going to cover, and again the effect on the audience. Interestingly, Olunde is able to invert this message by reminding Jane that he's had plenty of time in England to study your people, nicely embedded. It is through Olunde's mirroring of Jane's words, so I've noticed a technique here, so he mirrors what she says. We see how ingrained this division is between them, back to my point up here. However, his use of Jane's own words suggests this is something that is born out of the legacy of colonialism, so I've gone back to linking the effect to the context. So note how everything is really tied back to the initial point that I made, and I can't stress enough, I wouldn't have such a tight structure here if I didn't have a plan and then I didn't choose the quotations that I wanted to go with each point. So you can see, if you just have a quick look at how many of these quotations are underlined. So this is really what you want to do with your evidence. So you want to just pepper your evidence throughout, use it to support what you're saying, use it to drive that particular point forward. So I've chosen 3 quotations here that really support my point. So that's why it's so detailed. That's why there's so much depth to it. So do try and think about including 2 to 3 quotations per point rather than just having one quotation and trying to say as much as you can. Sometimes that can be a little bit limiting if there's not enough in it. So because I've selected 3 different quotations, and because I've gone through and eliminated the quotations that initially I thought they were good, and I thought, actually, what am I going to say about those? There's not enough. I've now got quotations where I can talk about the language and I can talk about techniques that I've noticed. So it really is a good idea to put a little bit of time into planning and looking through your extract and thinking about the best quotations to use. So here are just my final tips. As I've just said, clear points in chronological order if possible. Choose relevant and interesting quotations. Like I said, you should have a range. Your initial highlighting and planning stage is a great time to group those quotations. As you can see from the example I just showed you, all of my quotations were mainly to do with personal pronouns and how each of them were using them and what that said. So I'd noticed a pattern there in terms of the use of personal pronouns. Use of the keywords or the synonyms. In lesson 1, if you remember, I did go through with you looking at the keyword, thinking about synonyms that you could use. Name and analyze techniques. If you see it and you know it, then name it. Don't just technique spot though, do talk about the effect of those techniques and what they add. Analyze language choice, so why did Soyinka, why did the writer choose the words that they have? Layer your analysis whenever you can. So one layer might be you talk about a personal pronoun. Your second layer might be that you then go on to talk about the fact that it's an exclamatory phrase. So just more than one, try and talk about more than one thing per quotation. Link back to the message wherever you can. Link to the effect of the reader or the audience. Use context if it supports and enhances your point, and try to use those academic phrases, as I've given you a few examples and I've given you a few words that you can kind of use yourself. And always, please do just go and check my micro lesson series if there's anything that you're not sure of. I do have series on how to make transitions. I do have some lessons on how to layer, how to think about talking about a quotation in more depth than just saying one thing. So there's lots and lots of micro lessons to help you with the depth of your analysis and really to help you with that sophistication in your essay writing. So thank you very much for taking part in this lesson. I really hope it's helped you in terms of how to pull all of those ideas together and to write an effective response. So thank you very much. Goodbye.